Tomorrow, Dave Frank, the pianist and teacher. Wednesday, baritone saxophonist Roger Rosenberg, who's been playing with Steely Dan a lot the past couple of years. Thursday, trumpeter Winston Byrd will be my special guest. Mr. Byrd is a wonderful trumpet player in person, and I'm looking forward to welcoming him and learning more about him and watching some of his music. I first found out about him when he was playing with T.S. Monk about 20 years ago. So, hello, Winston Byrd. And then Friday, who's our guest on Friday? I can't remember. This is one of the problems with aging. Okay, I got it. Lauren Schoenberg is going to be my guest on Friday. Lauren is a musician, an activist. He's done a lot at National Jazz Museum. We'll talk about him and his activities, but we're going to focus on great, rare jazz photos. Lauren has a Facebook group called Rare Jazz Photos where he and others post some great photos, not video. And so Lauren's going to come out, we're going to look at the pictures, and we're going to talk about them. Today, my special guest is none other than the great trumpeter, Randy Brecker. So Randy will be joining us momentarily.
Jazz trumpeter and composer Randy Brecker has helped shape the sound of jazz, R&B and rock for over 5 decades. His trumpet and flugelhorn performances have graced hundreds of albums by a wide range of artists. Born in 1945 in Philadelphia to a musical family, Randy's musical talent was nurtured from an early age. He attended Indiana University from 1963 to 1966, and later moved to New York, where he landed gigs with such prominent bands as Clark Terry's Big Bad Band, the Duke Pearson Big Band and the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra. In 1967, Randy ventured into jazz rock with the band Blood, Sweat and Tears, but left to join the Horace Silver Quintet. After Horace Silver, Randy joined Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers before teaming up with his brother Michael, Barry Rogers, Billy Cobham and John Abercrombie to form the seminal fusion group Dreams. By 1975, Randy and Michael were ready to front their own group, the Brecker Brothers, a band of immeasurable impact and influence. They released 6 albums and garnered 7 Grammy nominations between 1975 and 1981. In 1992, exactly 10 years after they parted ways to pursue solo careers, Randy and Michael reunited for a world tour and the triple Grammy-nominated GRP Records recording Return of the Brecker Brothers. As a composer, performer, Randy continues to influence and inspire young musicians around the world.
Wow. Hello, Randy. All right, man. A little slow start here. We had some technical issues as usual, but
Oh,
here we are.
okay. Well, you got it.
Looking good, looking good. Pleasure to have you, my friend. How are you?
Well, we're doing okay here, trying to stay busy as we can. It's pretty crazy, what's going on, and I only hope for the best for all of us in the future. In the music world, it's a big, kind of blank slate right now. But I trust, we're all pretty industrious, and we'll figure a way out of this. I think we'll come back eventually as stronger than ever when people realize how much they miss us.
Yeah, I think that when you do come back, when performances begin again, they'll be appreciated in a new kind of way. Because sometimes we don't appreciate something until we don't have it anymore. And now the fact that,
Indeed.
in fact, that we can't go hear live music, we can't go to the Village Vanguard or to a concert or something, we realize how important the music really is.
Indeed.
So
Uh,
you're based in East Hampton, Long Island. Pardon me.
Yeah, that we are. We've been out here for years, man. It started as a summer place, but we've built onto it, and we moved out here full time when our daughter was born, Stella, about 11 years ago.
And are you near the beach? Are you, what's the physical layout there?
Yeah, we're not far from the beach, and well, the beach is about 10 minutes, and the bay is about 10 minutes. So we're kind of situated, and both have its unique properties. The bay is usually less crowded, and it's a beautiful sunset. We like being around nature, and there's enough musicians out here to have when it was going, a weekly jam session that was always a lot of fun to play. And there's a good jazz station out here, WPBB, and we're real happy. And it's not that far from the city that we can't get in when need be, or to the airport, which is where I usually end up. But it's going to be ways away.
How far is the airport? How far is JFK from East Hampton?
Well, it's about an hour, 45 minutes, I guess, but they're what they call jitney buses every hour or so, and they drop you off in Queens, about 5 minutes from LaGuardia or 15 minutes from JFK. It's quite a nice ride, actually. So, and I remember all those times from Manhattan would take just as long getting to the airport through the tunnel. So it's a pleasant ride.
Yeah.
You get used to it very easily.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful place out there. Well, a bunch of people are on here. We've got about 100 people on here so far between Facebook and YouTube.
Great.
Kenny Durham's daughter, Yvette Durham, says
Oh,
hello.
great. Well, hello back to her.
When you
Right.
first came to New York, was Kenny Durham on the scene?
Oh, of course, yeah. And in fact, I just mentioned I did a workshop today earlier, and I mentioned that I had the chutzpah to ask anyone if I could sit in, and Kenny Durham was one of those gentlemen. He was playing at Slugs. I went up to him and I asked him if I could sit in, and he said no. But he was very nice, and he actually said, he nudged me, said, "Are you Randy Brecker?" And I was amazing that he asked. I had been, I guess, playing in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Yeah, I thought so because you have long hair." And I got to know him reasonably well. You know, he's such a sweet guy, and he's just one of my heroes forever.
Yeah, I loved the way Kenny Durham played ballads.
Oh,
Something
sure.
that, for me personally, not enough people are playing ballads anymore. I don't know if it's the fast-paced times we live in. Are ballads more challenging than other music?
Well, it's funny you ask that, man, because I've been heavily into ballad playing lately, and I enjoy it. In fact, last night, I come down to the music room every night and play for 2 or 3 hours off and on to keep my thing going, and I didn't feel like warming up last night. It's funny you touched on this, and I just bought or downloaded a Coltrane ballad record, and also another record of ballads by tenor players. I noticed some all great tunes, great players. So instead of warming up, I just played 3 or 4 ballads, a lot of long tones with Train. Let's see, with Ben Webster, with Coleman Hawkins. So that was my 45-minute warm-up last night, was playing ballads. And and we hadn't talked about this, I swear, I've never really done a full-fledged ballad record. So by hook or by crook, I'd like to do that because I believe that's one of my fortes. And it's something I really enjoy doing. There's so much room for expression and playing. There's so many great tunes. So I'm just in the process of thinking about that and maybe narrowing down a few tunes and thinking who would play on it. I've never quite done that before, so that might be an idea for the future. But it's true, things have sped up in this day and age, but ballads, I hope at any rate, will always be with us. And KD was one of the best interpreters of anyone. As he said, he knew how to get to the meat of the changes.
Yeah, you mentioned Ben Webster. For me, that magic sound that Ben Webster had, I mean, there was so much emotion attached to his playing. Yeah. Just incredible. You mentioned possibly doing a ballad recording. What is your latest recording? Is it the thing that you did with your lovely wife?
Well, yeah, that's the latest thing that came out. Actually, there's a new old thing that is just on its way to being out, and that's the Brecker Brothers band record from 1980, from a tour we did in Europe, and this was recorded in Germany at a small concert hall there, which I have no recollection of the gig, but it was recorded and broadcast on the NDR network. And our record company guy, Joachim Becker, who I've been working for years, is now hooked up with the commercial arm of NDR, which is I can't think of the name now, DeltaMusic.com. So they just released it at the end of March over there, and we just got some copies, and we're releasing it over here. It's just called Live and Unreleased. Brecker Brothers Band with Barry Finnerty, Mark Gray, Richie Morales, me, Mike, and who did I leave out? Mark Gray, Barry Finnerty, me, Mike, and I'm leaving somebody out, but it's a nice recording. It was nice to hear just out of the blue. Joachim wanted to release it, so here it is. Oh, Neil Jason on bass, the great Neil Jason.
Yeah.
We just actually, I happened upon that tour, us playing at Puri Jazz Festival with that 1980 tour. Julie Logan from the New Audiences was our tour manager, and we were young and crazy. That's all I can say. It was a crazy tour, but that record just came out. Also, let me mention, while I think of it, in the can is a record that I co-led. It was also really led by the great George Woody, who did a lot of the programming and sequencing on keyboards, and features Dave Weckl on some tunes, and John Patitucci. Myself and Eric Marienthal have a record called Double Dealin'. We just titled it, and that'll be out sometime in the fall. Kind of funky stuff.
Yeah.
So there's stuff in the can, luckily.
The Brecker Brothers, that was a great period there. I remember you did a live New Year's Eve broadcast in New Year's Eve 1979, 1980. I guess it was from 7th Avenue South.
It could have been that same band. It would have been.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. So I'm glad you got some documentation. That was a real exciting period. You know, I wanted to ask you something I've always wondered about. What happened in the Brecker household when you were kids? Because that produced two of the greatest musicians in this music, you and Mike. I mean, I understand your dad was a part-time musician who brought musicians home. Talk to me about your childhood and how music was such an important part there.
Well, it was important. He was a lawyer by trade, but his parents were immigrants, and they grew up on a tough life growing up. But he worked his way up, and probably he was a musician first. He probably would have been a musician had circumstances lent themselves to that. But there was growing up in Philly, and we were one block out of the city limits, so officially we were in suburbia. But our next door neighbor, by sheer accident, was a fine tenor player. His sister was a fine jazz singer, and there were local cats coming over all the time to play. A great trumpet player named Bobby Mojica, who's still with us and had a great career in Detroit, and who I actually sound like. I met him a couple years ago after not seeing him for years and years. I was a kid, and he gave me a CD of the stuff he'd been doing all these years in Detroit. He's in his mid 80s now, and just must have rubbed off because I sound like him. He doesn't sound like me. I sound like him. He was a fine young trumpet player. He was always at the jam sessions. And so I just grew up with music. I've told this story many times. When I was 2 weeks old, my dad wrote a tune about me saying that I'd play a horn, maybe a hot fife, love music even more than my wife. It was called The Hottest Man in Town. So I was kind of predestined. I had no choice, really, as did my brother. And my sister, I have to mention, Emily, is a fine musician, piano teacher. She always had a little stage fright, but she went further in education. She got a master's degree in music composition at Penn, and plays harp now, still plays piano, was a very busy piano teacher and head of the suburban school system. So my mother was an artist, a portrait artist, great. Went back to the museum school, where Rocky ran up the stairs. There was that was the art museum. She got her degree in art when she was, mid-50s, but she was a serious artist and also played a little piano. Grandfather kind of came out of, the 20s, sang great, out of, I guess, the, what do you call it, halls, or whatever, I can't think of the word now, but my other grandfather played the violin. And I had mentioned this earlier. I have two kind of more distant relatives who were definitely in the business. My great uncle, my grandfather's brother, Uncle Lou Brecker, was the owner of the famous Roseland. And his family ran Roseland for 70 years. You believe that? It moved. So he was a famous guy in the business. He gave Louis Armstrong his first gig when he moved from Chicago to New York. And on my mother's side of the family, my great first cousin, I think it was my grandfather's first nephew. His name was Morton Tukoski. His stage name was Morton DaCosta, and he became a very famous director. Among his movies were The Music Man, 76 trombones, Annie Mame. He was really big in the business, died relatively young, but that whole music thing pervades our family. That's a kind of a long answer, but we were just born with it. Mike came up.
Did you ever do the Ancestry.com, the roots of your family?
No, I should probably do it one of these. I know. Other than that, I don't know much about our ancestry, other than it was in the Russian vortex, Austria, Russia, that element. A lot of people were lost in the Second World War, of course. But one of these days, it crosses my mind, I should probably investigate it a lot further. I have been to Poland, which is where part of our family was from when my brother was seriously ill. I have a friend over there, Włodek Pawlik, a wonderful composer and pianist who was searching for a match for my brother, and I played a fundraiser and went to the area called Tucholchin, which is very close to Tukoski, which is my mother's maiden name, like I mentioned, and the actually rabbi in the synagogue there, his last name was Tukoski, so we have Polish roots too.
Wow. When I was a young man growing up, the first time I knew of Randy Brecker was Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Got a question from one of our viewers. Whatever happened to Bobby Columby? Bobby was
Well,
the drummer and later producer.
yeah, he was a producer, and he's still going strong. I mean, not as a player. I think, stopped playing years ago. But among his many achievements are, uh, he was an executive at Columbia Records. If I'm not wrong, he was vice president of West Coast operations. He held that position for quite a while, and then he signed Harry Connick to the label. He is currently the manager of the young and very successful. He's not that young anymore, but he's younger than me. Everybody's young. Chris Bodie. He single-handedly, Bobby and Chris, have made big inroads in Chris's career. He's a headliner and does quite well. Bobby's the guy behind the scenes, and I'm sure he has a lot of other things he's doing. We don't talk that much, but we've stayed in touch all these years, and he lives in LA and has had a really successful career on the business side of it. And he was an innovative drummer. His brother, Harry, was Monk's manager. So he also grew up with coming home, and Monk and Miles would be sitting in their living room. He was a avid bebopper and self-taught drummer, and really a force behind the scenes in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Very ahead of his time businessman, very smart guy, and I'm happy to still call him a friend.
I spoke with Al Cooper a few years ago, and he said one of the things he wanted to do when he formed Blood, Sweat, and Tears is to kind of sound like the Maynard Ferguson big band on the Roulette records in the 60s. When you guys were first putting Blood, Sweat, and Tears together, what were your thoughts? What was happening?
Well, I quite honestly didn't have any thoughts because I was the last guy to join the band, and I was hired because they already had two trumpets, and one of the players, I forget his name, I think it was John something, was also a high school band teacher, and he decided he didn't want to let go of his position as a teacher, and they needed a trumpet player. And I had been friends with the lead player in the band, Jerry Weiss, who was a part-time or was a graduate of Juilliard. There was a big band at Juilliard, and I would play with the band. Jerry was the lead player in the band and liked my playing, so he recommended me, and I was the last guy to join the band. So all the forethought had been with Al Cooper in the core of the band, which was Columbi, Jimmy Fielder, and Steve Katz. And Freddie Lipsius, a great altoist and arranger who they hired to arrange all the music for the two trumpet, alto, and trombone horn section.
Yeah. Well,
so that's the history behind it.
Well, that music still has the excitement that it generated in 1967. I remember when it first came out. I got a question here from someone who identifies themselves as Trump Forever. We won't comment on that. He asked, does anyone do recording sessions anymore without overdubbing?
Well, yeah, they do. I did one, another record that'll be coming out in the jazz world. They do. I don't think they do in the pop world, nor they do records with humans, let alone overdubbing. And we do a lot of sessions right here. Here's the mic right next to me. We record at home for people all over the world who send us files. But jazz records are always made 90% of the time. There might be a little additions after live. We did the Brecker Plays Rovati. That record was in a studio in Brooklyn. We're all together. We fixed it up a little afterwards with technology, but it was all recorded live, as are most records. I recently did a record with Mark Copeland and Drew Gress and Dave Liedman and Joey Barron. That'll also be coming out. I'm not sure what they're calling it, but we were all in the studio in Brooklyn. Take one, take two. Okay, we got that one. And we did the whole record in maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it's still done. Long story short.
Okay.
It's
a viewer, Javier, asks, Randy, I'm a huge fan of Joe Farrell. What do you remember about Joe?
Well, Joe was just a character, but the sweetest guy you ever want to meet, and could play all the woodwind instruments. So he was very busy in the recording studios, and also just as a player. When I first moved to New York, in 1960, late 65. I was September of 65, bleeding into 66. He had a real choice gig at the New York Playboy Club. He had that gig for months as a player. And eventually we were paired together in quite a few different projects, did a million sessions with him. Also a Mike Longo record that the recently passed Mike Longo, very fine record. And we played in the Mingus Dynasty Band, many gigs with Joe. And we went to Japan many times. There's a video still available from the Oryx Jazz Festival. It's either 1980 or 1982. With the horn section was Joe Farrell, Joe Henderson, Michael Brecker, me, and Freddie Hubbard. So that was a thrill. And rhythm section was Peter Erskine, Alfonso Johnson, George Duke, and Robin Ford. We were Fusion Band D. That was the name. It was a huge jazz festival. We played baseball stadiums. There was Fusion Band C, Fusion Band D. That was a lot of fun. Benny Goodman had a band. It was with Teddy Wilson, so it was a mixture of different styles. That was a lot of fun.
Randy, over the years, because you did so much studio work, you played with a lot of different people, and in the course of your life in jazz, you've played with Clark Terry and Duke Pearson Big Band, and just so many other people, Horace Silver. Is there anyone that you didn't get to play with that you wish you had played with? Or same thing today, anybody on the scene today?
Well, I always had set my sights. I would have loved to have played in a good situation with Sonny Rollins because I loved his playing so much, and he had such open ears, and his concept was so fluid, and you could just almost do whatever you wanted behind him because he was such an open to different things in his music and was such a spiritual. Not only do I wish I played with him, but I wish I got to know him better. I got to know him a little by talking to him when we played opposite him a few times, but never really got to play with him. So that's probably number one. I would have loved to have availed that opportunity.
By the way, Sonny Rollins has an article that he wrote in the New York Times today that you should check out.
I already saw it. I read it. It's great.
About the importance of art in our culture. Yeah, I thought it was
so
really
true. And I know he's a good friend of yours, and you've done really some great interviews with him and extracted so much information.
Yeah, he's a fascinating man. Do you have a favorite ballad you like to play?
Well, one that I play a lot is Body and Soul. I seem to, because everybody, I get placed in a lot of different circumstances at colleges, universities, pickup bands here, pickup bands there, and that seems to be a tune everybody knows. So I played it quite a bit. I played it last night. That was on the record with, I forgot who the tenor player was now on there, but just happened to play it last night on that ballad record. Paul Gonsalves. I hadn't heard him play it before. He's on that all tenor playing ballad record. But like I said, I have a pretty wide. I know a lot of tunes, and I try to mix it up and not play the same tune every night. But I probably played that ballad more than any.
Randy, what about writing? You've written a number of great things. Do you write when you're inspired? Do you write against the deadline? What's your process as a composer?
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't been writing that much. I probably will start again now that I'm home because I've been traveling so much, and the way the business kind of eroded getting paid for when you write, that probably had an effect on my concentrating on the trumpet more. But I've been when I was in writing mode, which was until maybe 3 or 4, as many as 5 years ago, I think, when we did a Brecker Brothers reunion. That's probably about 5 band reunion. Mike had sadly passed away 13 years ago, but I put the old band back together and I wrote a bunch of material for that record, which I think was about 5 years ago. Since then, I've written a couple tunes, but I just haven't been concentrating on it, or felt, quite honestly, felt like it for one reason or another. But when I was actively doing it, it was kind of all the above. I remember hearing an interview, Herbie Hancock kind of being asked the same question on the radio station. What was his inspiration behind writing? And he said forthrightly, well, when I have a record to do on Thursday and it's Tuesday and I don't have any tunes. So I consciously used that as an example to go after getting a record contract where I really had to produce material every year, and hence the advent of the Brecker Brothers in 1975, when I was really writing a lot. And we had a deadline every year where we had to come up with tunes. I had written all the material for the first record, which was supposed to be, in my head, a solo record, but actually Clive Davis insisted we call the band the Brecker Brothers. He thought of the name, and yeah, it was a great idea. Alliteration, it kind of rolled off your tongue. At first, I resisted because Sanborn was in the front line with us, and I said he's going to look like the long-lost cousin or something. But that was how the thing got started. And I just made sure, we were talking about this at the workshop earlier, that I would sit and write as a craft. You know, to be a composer and arranger, you really have to sit there and do it. You can't just wait for inspiration. I remember hearing an interview on TV by the great Truman Capote talking about writing books, and how the craft part of it is you just have to sit there and do it. You can't wait for inspiration. So I would dutifully, back then I was also busy in the studio, so when I would get home at night after playing trumpet, I would just sit at a piano, pencil and paper. Score paper was before all the technology, and just write down ideas, record myself on a cassette recorder, ping pong two recorders back and forth, and write and piece together tunes. Sometimes like putting a giant jigsaw puzzle together. That's the way it generally worked with me. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun to do, and it also gave me a chance just to present my ideas of my conception of everything I'd grown up with and heard up to that point.
We got a question from our friend Mark Morganelli, who's got a wonderful performance space in Tarrytown Jazz Forum. He wanted to ask you about your favorite experiences with 7th Avenue South. For those who don't know, in the 70s and the 80s, Randy and Mike had a club downtown across from Sweet Basil called 7th Avenue South, which was just a wonderful place to hear the best musicians in New York. I would imagine a difficult experience because the club business is extremely hard. What do you remember about 7th Avenue South?
Well, hello to Mark, and I know he can relate to this since he's operated clubs and has been an entrepreneur, one of the best, I might add, and his current place, Jazz Forum, is just wonderful. We wish him the best. I know this is a tough time for him, obviously, but I also enjoy his posts. Every day he posts playing another tune, which is quite admirable that he's able to do that, so I wish him well. Yeah, it's a tough business, and we got in through the back door by accident, really. Had a couple partners, one of whom left because he couldn't go on the liquor license. A young gentleman, his name was Bob Cooper, who ran Boomers. He had too many traffic tickets, and he got kind of PO'd the fact that they wouldn't let him on the liquor license. So in essence, he couldn't own the club, and he just kind of left us hanging with our partner, Kate Greenfield, who was a school teacher at the time. We had lent him a modest sum of money he had found a new space that Boomers, now since Boomers was forced out, there was some reason why that couldn't continue. We named it 7th Avenue South, and we just learned how to run it by hook or by crook. Kate did most of the work. The fun part was just getting to play, being able to play there whenever we felt like it, either as Brecker Brothers, or that was the place where later Steps Ahead developed, and I'd play there probably more than Mike did with just friends, you know. We called ourselves the 7th Avenue South All-Stars. Generally it was Al Foster, Buster sometimes, Cedar Walton, Slide Hampton. people like that. I remember Cedar kind of ambling over to me, and he had been sitting at the bar, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, Brecker, ain't it about time for the All-Stars?" I said, "Yeah, okay, let's do that. We'll do it in a couple, 2 or 3 weeks." So that was that for both of us. I think that was the great part, just the way that the music was booked. It wasn't strictly a jazz club. We were kind of the brother or sister club to McKell's uptown, and they had the kind of the same policy. So people would float uptown, downtown, go to our place, go back up there. You know, we might have Art Blakey one night, and then the Jamaica Boys with drawing a blank, with Marcus Miller. Yeah, it was Marcus's young band. They were all teenagers.
Yeah.
The next night, and have Yusuf Lateef one night, and then another fusion type band with Will Lee and the 24th Street Band with Hiram Bullock the next night. And the great thing was the way to see the musicians from all walks of life got along. You know, one of I always mention this. Cecil Taylor hanging out with Hiram. They were best buddies. They liked to argue about things, and they'd always be together downstairs by the bar arguing about this or that. Became fast friends. So that part was great.
You know, Roger Rosenberg is coming on Wednesday. He sent me a photo of Bob Mintzer's first big band.
Oh, yeah. That was
Sections
the birthplace
with
of that.
David Sadborn, Michael Brecker, Roger. If I'm not mistaken, 7th Avenue South was where they first played, right?
Yeah, indeed. That was the birthplace of that band, and played many nights down there, and did many records with Bob, and hopefully some in the future. He's just doing great these days.
Well, as long as we're talking about big bands, a question from a viewer, Open Song. Can you comment on the relationship between the lead trumpet and the drummer in big band jazz?
Well, you know, those are kind of focal points when you're in a big band, and along with the bass play, you know, the rhythm section's all very important, but the drummer's the loudest. Some people say you got to depend on the bass player, and also, you know, I've been deeply into, I don't know, rhythm guitar, Freddie Green lately. Listen to a lot of bassing on YouTube, but the lead trumpet player swings the whole band. If you don't have a swinging lead trumpet player, you're sunk. You know, you can get away maybe with a non-swinging lead trombonist, or man, and this is kind of a facetious comment, or lead alto player, but not really. But the lead trumpet player is the literally the leader of the band, along with the drummer. They have to have a close relationship. And one of my big thrills, of course, was standing between Mel Lewis and Snooky Young when I played in Thad and Mel's band. That was one of the greatest spots of my life, just hearing the two of them and the way they complemented each other and always listened to each other.
In your experience, who were some of the great lead trumpet players? I know I did a film a few years ago about a guy named Paulie Cohn, who was the lead trumpet player with Basie. In your memory, who were some of the lead trumpet players in the bands that you played with that stand out?
Well, the guys I played with most, of course, Snooky. What can you say? He was such a great, so swinging. What a sound! What a vibrato! He was a great soloist. He was just a wonderful person. He's so sorely missed. Wrote recently I guess an essay about him that Clay Jenkins is putting out. A wonderful trumpet player who teaches at Eastman, because he was very close to Snooky and played with Snooky in the Clayton Hamilton big band, another great big band. But other lead players, you know, I had a great time in the Duke Pearson big band, and the other three trumpet players, Marvin Stamm, Joe Shepley, and Bert Collins, were also great lead trumpet players. I was struggling as a lead player then. They'd let me play on one tune, maybe if I was lucky. I didn't have the range yet. I have better range now. But they were also, we were called the White Knights in the Duke Pearson big band. They were also big influence on me. Also, let me think of some other ones. I played some nights in the one of my first gigs in New York was with the Charlie Barnett big band. I think Clark Terry got me on that gig. There's a recording, so I have proof of it. probably 1966. Clyde Riesinger, he was a great lead player. Clark was in the band. I don't think played lead, but I think Snooky was the lead player. Also, I have to mention Ernie Royal. He was on the scene. I played with him a bunch. He was just a fantastic lead player. I have to mention Bernie Glow, who was trumpet king of the studios. Just a perfect, exquisite sound that emanated. And he was also such a gentleman. I miss him very much. I'm luckily friends with his daughter. So those are some guys that come to mind. I was lucky to have played with all those guys and having played in all those big bands.
You know, when you came to New York, there was something called the studio scene. The last that was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, a little bit in the 80s. For those people who are unaware of what that was like, can you tell us about the studio scene and how you were involved in it?
Well, that's a long and involved question. I arrived in New York, like I said, and I was with the intent of finishing school at NYU, but there was so much work, I kind of got sucked into the work, so to speak. Marvin Stamm had come to town around the same time, and we had known each other. He was my band leader at the Stan Kenton Band Camp when I was 15. And Dave Sanborn was in that band, was there at the camp, as was Don Grolnick. So he knew about me, and I, of course, knew him from his work with Stan Kenton, and I loved his playing. So he, I think, really helped me when I moved to New York because I was a sub for him. I knew Clark from the Notre Dame Jazz Festival. He was a judge. He let me occasionally sub for him. I tell this story how there was one day, I just wrote this in this essay, Snooky had a Cadillac, and once we were on some sessions, or I was subbing for them, or not subbing, but they called me up they were closely booked. It was either Clark or Snooky, and I would cover for them. That's the word I was looking for, one of them. And he had his Cadillac, parked by a parking meter, but they had to go to 2 or 3 more sessions that day. And Snooky had kind of a cap on all the time that looked like a chauffeur's cap. They had me sit in the front seat. He gave me his cap, and I drove them around to their other sessions for that day, waited for him, kind of let me drive his car around the block until they would come out. And they were hysterical that they had me as their chauffeur, the white guy with, the chauffeur cap on. So there was a lot of great camaraderie, first of all. Everyone was really close. There was Jim and Andy's, where guys would hang between sessions. Eventually, I was lucky enough to, first subbing for Marvin, but then people would call me on as not as a sub, but as one of the guys on the list, so to speak. And I ended up being quite busy in the recording studios, not only for records, but on jingles. That was the preponderance of a lot of the work we did as trumpet players. And it was always a thrill. You never knew if you were going to make a lot of money on the jingle, if it would go final, or if it was a demo, or if they'd break it up into 30. Remember, was one of the coffees. That was a good one. Joe Shefley said every time he saw the commercial on TV, he'd stand up and salute, where they broke it up into like 30 different commercials, so you had to get paid residuals for each one. So it was a lot of fun, man. Some of the other, you'd show up at a session, never sure who else was going to be there, but could be sitting next to Thad Jones. Even Herbie was doing that for quite a bit. Ron Carter, of course, did a lot of sessions. Herbie was on a lot until, he wanted to have more of a career as a performer. But it was a great way to make a living. Particularly, I think, as a trumpet player, my brother was never that interested in doubling, which you had to do to really get on. He got on a lot of sessions as a tenor player, but it was an artistic decision on his side where he didn't really want to learn. He could do it. He could play flute. He studied clarinet for 5 or 6 years. He just didn't want to play those instruments. But I really had fun as a trumpet player in a section, blending with the other cats, playing in tune, sight reading music. I think it was more fun for the trumpet players on that level than it was for the saxophone players that really were jazz artists and just wanted to play. So it was a great way to make a living for while it lasted. I'll tell you that. And we were all playing at the same time too at night, so it was the best of both worlds.
Then the synthesizer came in and a lot of things changed, and goodbye
Well, it sure
studio.
did. Yeah, I got called by a guy I was working for that it was a studio downtown on Green Street or somewhere, and I show up, and I'm the only one there. And the guy, I won't mention his name, but he asked me to play a chromatic scale. He asked me to play some high notes, some low notes, some staccato notes, this and that. And I finally asked, man, this is kind of weird. So what are we doing? And he said, well, it's just an experimental film. And obviously he was sampling me before I knew what the word meant, and then it was all downhill from there.
Wow. Ron Vincent is in the house. He says
Yes,
one of my favorite times playing with Randy was with the Mulligan All Star Tribute Band with Brookmeyer,
sure.
Conitz, Ted Rosenthal, Dave Johnson. Randy, could you talk about playing with Bob Brookmeyer and Lee Konitz, particularly that music?
Well, that was a thrill. I was just happy to be there since I really didn't have I knew Jerry and I played a couple gigs with him on mainly on a cruise years ago, but it was just a thrill being once again between those two guys and seeing how they approached the music. They were really true improvisers. They would really make it up. There wasn't guys that just played the same stuff every night. So I really had to be on my toes. The rhythm section, led by Ron and the Cats, Jerry's last rhythm section, they were swinging from note one to the last note of the last set, and we had a ball when we played together. And we did one record as thank you, Jerry, with that band, which was. Man, I can't think of the label, but it was around for quite a while. So we did get to record, and I would always hope that we could play that material sometime again. His wife, Francesca, put us into it, but I think there are some Mulligan things floating around now, so maybe we'll get another shot of it one of these years.
Viewer Warwick Adler asks, what are your thoughts on the impact of Woody Shaw on the jazz trumpet?
Well, he created his own band of followers. He was kind of in a way, the way I think it's looked now, the last of that line following Freddie Hubbard, and then the next big thing I think was really Wynton, who created his own stream, so to speak. But I was lucky to meet Woody when we were both 19 years old in Seattle. I was out there for the summer seeing a girlfriend and taking some courses at the University of Washington, and there was a club led by named the Penthouse. It was run by a guy named Charlie Puzo, I think that was his last name, and they had great music there. And one week they had Horace with Woody and Joe Henderson and Roger Humphreys, and I can't think of the bass player's name. It'll come later.
John B. Williams?
No, he was with Horace when I was, I can't think of it, but they were great. And I got to meet Woody. There were jam sessions on the weekends with local guys, and we would play up until when Horace played. So Woody had got to hear me play, was very complimentary, and I, of course, was in love with his playing. So we palled around a little that week, got to know each other in Seattle, and when I came to New York, he was very helpful and also getting gigs. If he was double booked, he'd get me on some gigs and was just always an inspiration. He was such a serious young man and so well versed in jazz history, perfect pitch, and was already composing. He was way ahead of his time.
Randy, you've done a lot of work in jazz education. You go around the world to clinics and play with groups. Who were the young trumpeters that you listen to that you think show great promise?
Well, there's so many to mention. I do go around to a lot of the colleges. The main thing is, without I'm probably not that familiar with the younger guys that are in New York now, but they're just great players all over the world now. That's all, I'd like to say. Even in China, was talking about that earlier too. There's a wonderful jazz trumpet player who's well known in China. I can't think of his name now. His last name is Li. I forget his first name, but it's trumpet. Jazz trumpet is truly globalized. There's great, Teramasu Hinu, and there's other great guys in Japan. One of my favorite players, he's a younger guy, but he's older, is Till Broner from Germany, who I met when he was a teenager. I think I gave him a brief lesson. He's a wonderful young player. Out where I live, there's Alex Sipiagin, a wonderful Russian trumpet player, and there are just scores of great young players. I'm a big Winton fan too. I mean, to me, he's younger too.
You've been playing the trumpet for over 60 years now. Is it still a difficult instrument?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm down here every night, 2 or 3 hours resting in between, carefully, just working on my technique and vocabulary. Mostly my technique and just endurance, because we're on uncharted territory now. I usually had a certain amount of 2 or 3 weeks, so I knew when my next gig was coming and how much time I had to really build up my endurance and chops for the next gig. There's a certain amount of trumpet playing that is pure muscle training and sport. It's like sports training. You just have to do it every day. There's also the musical side of it, and you want to expand your jazz repertoire, your jazz vocabulary, so to speak. So it's a tall order, and it certainly doesn't get easier as you get older. And if you want to keep playing, you just have to put the time in. There's no let up, so to speak.
Yeah, we're coming near the end of this. I just want to ask you about two more former collaborators. His daughter is in the house, Lydia. Dave Liebman. You guys were played together in New York in the early days, right?
Well, we sure did. Dave was one of the first. The strange thing is I don't quite remember how we met. He must have, I think it was at a Jazz Interactions thing at the club, which was turned into the Bottom Line, but previous to that it was a
Red Garter?
Yeah, the Red Garter. I was thinking Red, I couldn't think of Garter. And they had you'd play on the stage was on a fire engine, as I remember, and I think we did a Jazz Interactions thing. They mainly had Dixieland bands there, and that's where I met Dave. And we've been fast friends ever since. And we played. I just had mentioned that record we did just I don't know 3 or 4 months ago, which will be coming out soon. And Lydia's really taken the bull by the horn. Is helping a lot of us with promotion and everything she does. She's so great at it.
Yeah, she is. And the other guy is someone who's very popular on my channel for some of the lessons he's done, and that's Hal Galper.
Oh, well, I love Hal, man. We had so many great experiences and did so many records of his where he wrote all the material. He was the big influence on both me and Mike, because he was a true visionary, and he wrote, as did Horace Silver. Those two guys made me realize that you really have to start writing to expound upon your vision, so to speak. So he was a big influence, and we had a really good band back then. I have all those records, and there's some of the few that I really like listening to. They're kind of historic, and he's still with us. We still talk every now and then, and hopefully maybe we'll play sometime again. We haven't in a long time.
Well, we're going to go out with a video courtesy of Louis Garrett's of Hal Galper, Michael Brecker, and Randy Brecker. I want to thank you, Randy, for taking the time from your busy schedule to join us here, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I hope so. This was a lot of fun to talk to all these wonderful friends of mine. So just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll see you on the other end in person.
All right. Blessings to you and your lovely family, Randy.
All right. You too, Brett.
Thanks
Great to
a million.
see you.
Jazz trumpeter and composer Randy Brecker
Bye.